Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the IVES CL12 in a US4, and here it is. So this is a touch latch is what this is called. The CL12 is the larger of two touch latches that IVES currently manufactures. There's the CL12, which is also known as the, you see on there, it says Glenn Johnson Invisible Latch BB is what that says. BB stands for large. Before these were marketed under the IVES name, 30 years ago, they were marketed as the Glenn Johnson touch latch, and it was the BB large. The CL11 is the IVES other touch latch, CL11, CL12. CL11 is the smaller one. That would say on it Glenn Johnson Invisible Latch. AA was the small. Shifting these under the IVES name must just be for marketing. IVES is the accessory manufacturer under the Allegiant umbrella. Sister companies Glenn Johnson, Schlage, LCN, Von Duprin. Is how that's marketed. So this is the CL12. Along with the CL12, the CL11 is the CL14, which is an auxiliary pusher, which gives you more spring tension when you're dealing with doors that are heavier, is what you have. So this latch is going to be used, obviously, when you want to have a moderate-sized door where you have invisible control over it, where you can push on that door and it will latch, and then push on it again and it will release. People have used these on everything from medicine cabinets, even though this is probably a little large for a medicine cabinet. I'd probably use the smaller one, all the way up. But I've seen them installed on doors that were 3 foot by 8 foot tall, and remarkably they worked. There's no published weight rating for the door on this item. I've even recently sold this to someone who was using it in a drawer application. Literally a drawer. They wanted to push on the drawer and have a touch latch govern its installation. And I thought that was an ingenious way to do a drawer. I followed up with the client and I didn't get a response. I was curious to know how well it worked out for them. I imagine that it did. My only concern with the drawer is drawers will have a tendency to kind of, seat themselves in the closed position, so that might change the orientation of the drawer to be compensated for. But I imagine that it worked out. I probably would have heard if it didn't, is what I'm driving at. Let's take some basic dimensional properties of the CL14. By the way, this is in US4. The decorative plate that you see there is in a satin brass finish. This is available in other finishes. US3 for polished brass, US10 for satin bronze, US26D satin chrome. I don't know if it's available in any other finish. We'll take a look at that. Overall height of the body, about 2 1/4. Overall width of the body, about 1 1/4 inches. Thickness of this body is about 9/16. Then it will come with a strike plate. That overall height is 1 3/4 inches by about 11/16. Projection of the strike, not that that matters, but just for scope, looks like it's about 9/16. That's going to be installed, obviously, onto the door itself. You're going to get fasteners. You're going to get, let's see here now, 4 for the body. Okay, then you'll get 2 shorter ones for the strike. Okay. The other thing that's in the package will be this installation template, this piece of stamped wipe coat galvanized steel that you're going to need to use when installing it, and the instructions will show you why. Speaking of the instructions, let's switch to the screen view and let's take a look at all the supporting information. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Here is the item that we are looking at, and let's take a look at some photographs that we have first. Here they are. That's the packaging. All the contents. The body and the strike. The body. Side view, or an end view, I should say. That's what the door sees. Isometric type view. a close-up of what's stamped on the faceplate. I've had customers call and give me that information. Then there's also some additional, the backside, that's just plastic, the plastic body itself. The strike, cast brass. Screws, not in an exact US4 finish, but complementary. And then your installation template. Okay, so let's now look at the extended description information. Actually, first, let's look at the other finishes. US10 satin bronze, 26D satin chrome, polished brass, US3, US4 satin brass. So I had it right. Those were the 4 finishes. Now, extended description information. They talk about the fact that it's an invisible latch, dimensional properties. Invisible latch, ideal for installation where no visible latch is desired. Unit can be installed at the top, bottom, or side of the door. Can be mortised into the stop or surface mounted on the stop. That's not an awful idea to... that's not an awful idea to... Sorry. To have your... if you have a frame, you have a stop, you're going to need to, and here's your door, you'd be applying that right here. Okay, mortising it would allow you to move that down into this area here, obviously, into your stop. So you might want to consider, not having it hang off into the opening any more than necessary. Recommended for use on larger panels or regular size doors. And like I said, I've seen this installed on 3080 doors. Operation is simple. Latching is accomplished by a slight push. To unlatch the door, a harder push releases the door and pushes the door out. Brass and plastic construction applies 27 pounds, requires, I would say, 27 pounds to open the door. Brass, satin, brass with a clear coat. Okay, now there is, with the item itself will come installation instructions. The installation instructions that are actually with this unit that I've received, the year is 2020. That's important to know because the instructions that I've received are the Glenn Johnson instructions from 1999, not the more current 2003 installation instructions. I have them both linked to here. Because I find when I review them, I see some different information provided on them. First, the product brochure. Let's take a look at the CL12 and its sister products I had mentioned. The smaller version, with its dimensions here, about half of the amount of force required to open the door. The CL12, and then the CL14 is here. Adds an additional 10 pounds of force. And really what you want to have is an adequate amount of pressure against the face of the door so that when you push the door in, the pusher or the spring power inside of the latch itself is adequate to not only allow the door to be pushed away from the latch, but also the internal components to operate correctly. If you are not pushing in and then the latch pushing you back out, the internal components won't articulate the way that they're supposed to work in order to free the latch. There's a catch that's in here that opens up in order to allow that hook or that portion of the latch strike, I should say the strike, to exit the body. So you might find that you have sloppy or inconsistent or poor operation, especially when you are working with heavier doors. That would be an indication to add the additional pushing outward, because you can't control how much force is coming back at you. You can only control how hard you're pushing away from you, and you need to have that pressure pushing away from you. The other time that I find people have trouble is when they have an extremely tall door, like that 3080 door that I had mentioned. It wasn't mounted here. or here. It was mounted right where you were pushing. If you take your 3080 door and you install that up in this area and you're pushing here, I would expect that you're going to have trouble with this because the amount of flex that the door, you're pushing here, okay? That's going to move. I would say that, you know, that entire door is going to actually move like that a little bit, you know, in a very exaggerated sense. You're pushing here, but that may not affect the same rate of movement up at the top of the door. You know, so if you move this a 1/16 of an inch, this may not move exactly the same amount, and it might render the operation of the latch a little sloppy. So if you were going to be installing it in that type of area, you might need to consider strategically placing an auxiliary pusher, you know, to compensate. Experimentation is the key word there. Now, those installation instructions, let's look at the ones that come with the unit first, and we'll just go over them. When we take this document, we can immediately ignore the AA portion. We can ignore what Glenn Johnson used to call the AP2, which we now call the CL14. Ignore that. So we've ignored a third of the page immediately. Then they show the dimensional properties here of the BB latch, or what we know as the CL12. Okay, dimensional properties, hole locations of the holes, that's all really nice to know. They show you the latch when it's surface mounted. So that gives you an idea of what it's supposed to look like. Imagine if you mortised that, okay, just move it over in your mind's eye along with the strike. And the important part really is down here. This is where the installation instructions really start. So the installation instructions tell us, install the latch case. See Note 1. Note 1, 3/16 clearance between door and stop is necessary to ensure proper operation of latch. So what they're saying here is when you are positioning what they're saying is this. The way that this is drawn, you've got the door. Imagine, remove from this in your mind's eye the metal template. They're saying here, you must have natively, before you even start, 3/16 of an inch from the face of the door to the face of the stop. Okay? If your latch is set back from the face of the stop, well, you know, that won't do you any good if you don't have 3/16 of an inch. Why? Because you need 3/16 of an inch movement to get the internal mechanism in the latch assembly itself to actually articulate and to latch and then unlatch the strike out of the lock body. I've had people call and say, yeah, I pushed the door closed and now I can't push it in far enough to get it to unlatch. And the obvious first question is, are you sure there was 3/16 of an inch margin from the face of the stop, or whatever would limit the door, to the inside face of the door? And they said, no, I think it's about 1/8 of an inch or less. And that's the problem. You know, the next question is, what do I do to get it open? Pull hard is the answer. Luckily, the last time I had that call, the client was able to actually get over the ceiling line into that opening in order to unscrew the latch. But I've had other people call and say, yeah, I'm going to have to break this off the door. So if you don't have 3/16, you're going to have trouble with that. So that's step 1, referring to Note 1. Step 2, remove screws from a latch and attach metal template as shown for locating screws. Close door gently against the prongs, marking locations for screws. Remove plate. Okay, so what they're talking about here is, you know, it's somewhat inferred that you are lining the latch body up with the face of the stop, and that's, you know, inferred here as well by this isometric drawing. Okay, now let's take a look at the IVES version of all of this. They certainly infer that here as well. And they're showing the metal template, but what they're saying here is that it appears as if you're attaching it to the top side of the installed body itself. Whereas in the Glenn Johnson version, they're clearly telling us install latch case. So they want you to physically install the latch case onto where it's going. Remove the screws from the latch and then attach the metal template as shown. So, I mean, to me they're showing us to remove the lock body to attach the metal template. The IVES version shows it installed on top of it. So, you know, what to do? Well, the only thing that this metal template is doing is allowing us to accurately locate the holes where you're going to drill for the strike. Okay, so it's going to be a matter of simply looking at the piece of hardware and then determining, you know, what is the correct way to do that. So let's switch to the screen view now, and let's, pardon me, the camera view, and let's take a look at that. Okay, so here's our hardware. So what the role of the template is to do, and it does say the prongs are to face away from the unit. You get that installed there, and then these prongs, which are pointing away, they just simply need to line up with where these screw holes would need to show for the latch. And this would be the way in which it would need to be shown. And when we get that lock body, I'm going to flip this around. When we get the lock body, the metal template, and the strike all in relationship to each other, it does give you the impression that that's going to mark it in the correct location. Okay. Now, if I pull the lock body off and just put that onto the stop, I mean, there's really no way that that's going to actually work, in my opinion, because the strike's going to be out of position. I mean, if this is attached to the face of the stop, that part of the strike is going to be hitting the face of the stop. So the reason that we have both of them there is because I think the Glenn Johnson installation instructions aren't calling it out correctly. Well, unless you're installing the strike in the opposite orientation, it doesn't appear to be, meaning rather than installing it, you know, this way, you're installing it this way. That might be okay. But even still, you'll have the heads of the screws to contend with. So I'm still gonna say that that's not even remotely accurate. So I believe the IVES version, where you're attaching it to the face of the latch itself, so that you are literally interpreting the installation instructions. They say remove the screws. They don't say and then put the latch on your desk and attach the template. They say remove the screws and then attach the template. So, you know, studying it closer tells us that, yeah, you have to put the template over the latch body. Let's switch back to the screen view. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, so we're gonna stick with this being the accurate way to show this on the IVES version. They're also inferring here that the latch body is not flush with the face of the stop. And and frankly, no dimension is given. So in the absence of this dimension, I'm going to go with the fact that you are going, provided you have 3/16 of an inch clearance here, that you're simply going to stick with flushing that to the face of the stop. When you put the metal template over the body and put a couple of screws into it, you'll then push the door against that metal template and it will mark the locations for what they call the door hook. Okay, pretty simple and straightforward. Let's go back to the Glenn Johnson version. Yeah, they even say reinstall the latch case. So they make it seem as if you're removing it, but I just don't see how that's going to work. It strikes me as unusual that they would package it with these installation instructions and not the more current ones. So reviewing both, I think, is necessary. Now to the IVES, let's do this. Okay, back to the IVES. Let's just hop over here now and start from the beginning. Installation instructions. Install latch case. 3/16 clearance between door and stop is necessary. So install the latch case. Clearance between door and stop is necessary to ensure proper operation of latch, which is 3/16 of an inch. Okay, step B, remove screws from latch and attach metal template as shown for locating hook screws. Be sure metal prongs of template point away from the latch. Close door gently against prongs. Marking locations for the screws. For the hook, remove the plate, install the hook on door, reinstall the latch case. So that's all simple and straightforward. To lock, push the door back to flush position. To release, push door against stop and release. Door must be able to be pushed in 3/16. It would be nice if they perhaps added, if this dimension is not observed, a lockout will occur. That might be, to put it in stark terms, might save some people. From assuming 3/16 is a suggestion. it's not a suggestion. Okay, I think that wraps up the installation instructions. I would, where to install it. I would install it in the area, if you're doing a larger door, in the area of where you're pushing against the door is where I would install it. Okay. Now, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page as seen here. When you click on that, you'll be able to pull up the IVES landing page on our site where you can view not only all of the IVES products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog here. Other encyclopedic documents would be kept on this page, such as templates, technical manual, current and prior catalogs, and with IVES, I've got a couple of them that are well over 100 years old. Okay, let's wrap up this video on camera. Now, in conclusion, this IVES CL12 CL11 series of material is the current available touch latches from IVES, and they have been available for at least 30 years. If I don't know how much, my knowledge of these goes back 30 years. I don't know how many years before 1990 these were available under the name Glenn Johnson. IVES, certainly in the 80s, had their 820. So if you have an IVES 820, that was a touch latch that they had. Those were installed on medicine cabinets, I find. When people call looking for the IVES 820, it was either an F2C or an F3, which is the finish, zinc or like a brass tone, medicine cabinets. Now, there was also another latch, a touch latch from IVES that I don't remember the part number of that. It's probably, if you search IVES touch latch, let's just see if I can quickly find it. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because people search for IVES touch latch and they ultimately bump into the current material, but it doesn't match what they have. So I had said the 820, yes. The 820 is certainly accurate, but I think IVES had their 821. Yeah, Ives had their 821. I'm looking at a template from Ives drawn in 1968. Actually, forgive me, 1984. So they made that one in the 80s, but that's been long discontinued as well. Okay. So the name Ives is synonymous with, obviously, touch latches, but what they're historically known for, if you look in those catalogs from, the dawn of the 20th century, basically, you're going to find that it was window hardware, sash lifts and sash locks. Knowing Ives from the second half of the 1980s, people would come in. If they come in and asked for Ives, they were looking for sash lifts or sash locks. However, under the Allegiant umbrella, since sometime I think in the 90s, Ives became the supplier of all accessory items to projects where you're going to see Schlage, LCN, Von Duprin, Glenn Johnson. But Ives doesn't just have window hardware. They have hinges, commercial hinges, continuous geared hinges, pin and barrel hinges, a full complement of pivots, every means by which to hang the door Ives can provide. All of the flat goods, kick plates, push plates, push and pull hardware, things of that nature. Door control devices would be by Glenn Johnson, like overhead stops and holders, but just manual door stops and holders Ives would do as well. So a trip through their catalog might be worthwhile for you to look at. And then they also have a relatively full offering of ladder pulls. There are other manufacturers who have far more available in that department, but ladder pulls are in that Ives catalog as well. Any questions on the CL12 in a US4 finish or any other Ives product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you very much. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.